Hello and welcome to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. I'm Jake, that's Sean over there. Another week now into the 2024 season. Sean, how have you been doing?
I've been good. I'm back in my usual setup, and I tried to play Pokemon a little bit while I was away. I mentioned this last week. Had a challenging time, but I did pick up some cards.
Oh, was that the Lorcana?
I did, yeah. I picked up some Lorcana cards. So
how did you feel about that? Because I watched Jared Grimes' video on playing Lorcana. He went to like some event thing. For anyone who doesn't know, this is the new Disney card game.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's very similar to like Magic meets Digimon meets Keyforge. It's like a blend of things. So I think the biggest difference with that game though, relative to the other games I've played, and I don't play Magic like proper format, but the card draw, the lack of card draw is intense. Like you just don't.
Is it like Digimon? Or
No,
like
Digimon,
One Piece comparably?
I don't know about One Piece, but Digimon, every single time you play a card, you evolve a Digimon, and Digimon you draw.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah, so I forgot about that.
You oftentimes are like replenishing your hand just one at a time. So there's like, sometimes you'll end up with a little bit less, but in this game, man, by turn like 5 or 6 in a lot of decks, you might have like 1 or no cards in hand, and you're just in top deck mode. And like, so it's interesting. It's an early game. There's only one set out. I remember when Digimon only had one set out. It's not wildly interesting, but I think the prices are outrageous. That's the big difference.
I have heard that too. So make sure that you don't break the bank for something that is more than likely going to get reprinted and pushed out a ton. Because I have heard it's really popular. I know a lot of people who went to it. We'll see how it holds up. But Disney adults, I mean, they got some money to spend over there and be able to
Pokemon
play
adults.
the game.
They got money to spend adults too.
Like literally any adult in any trading card game. But we specifically talk about Pokemon here on the Pokemon Trading Card Game podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. Let's, Sean, go into our beautiful, wonderful topics of the day. But first, a nice old comment that was left on episode 152 of the podcast by Gavin McGee. Gavin McGee says, just getting into the TCG, and you guys have been a big help. I'm currently trying to learn everything about the meta and intricacies of how the game is played. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Nice.
That's what we try to do. We try to get it to where everybody gets a little bit of everything, whether you're a veteran or a new player. And you can learn some things in here, Sean. But if you want to apply that stuff, you have a very short time to doing it. First, I do have to ask you, because we were asked this on Twitter and I did not know. Did you, because I sent you the link, did you apply and get into Pittsburgh?
I didn't apply. The Pittsburgh Regionals went live on Friday night. For those of you who are listening and don't know what the heck we're talking about. So the first regional of the new season went live. Registration went live last Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I was in Chicago, so I was in Central Time. I don't know what I was doing on Friday night, Jake. No clue. No idea. I was otherwise busy, though.
Not looking at his Discord DMs, that's for sure.
Mean, I did see it, but then I just like spaced, and I don't know if I would have gone either way, to be honest. Like, I don't know. But 8 o'clock rolled around Eastern, so 7 o'clock Chicago rolled around. And I was like, oh, yeah, this. And then I immediately opened Threads and Facebook and Burbank City posts, and people are like, yep, already sold out. 30 minutes. And I'm like, well, even if I wanted to.
Just like every other regional up to this point, it sells out pretty much within the first wave. I do think that they did say, Overload Events did say, I believe, that there will be more seats. It's probably going to be very, very little seats, but that is a possibility of something that could pop up. And the reason that we're telling you how fast they went away is because Peoria Regional, Sean, is happening in 2 days at the time of this recording. 1 day for listeners probably listening to this podcast. It is Peoria Regional is another event. It's going to be early October that the event actually takes place. Registration for all players and spectators. So that's an interesting thing too. Spectator passes are going to be opening up at the same time as players. So whether you want to go compete in the event or you want to go watch, it's all happening Wednesday, August 23rd at 7 p.m. Central Time.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I will say Peoria is, I believe, the regional that got the most hate last year for being like not a good. Is this Peoria that was like just it's not a good spot to host your regionals?
I would say that Peoria is not the greatest of cities. It's definitely not one of the cities that I would have thought of, but I think the quote unquote worst is very much by definition of how much you value. You know, do you value the city around it? Do you value the people running the event? But it's definitely not the most favorite spot.
Yeah,
I would say of all the Pokemon regionals. I can actually, I think, name the font in their little like trailer preview that they use in there because I think I use it for work a lot.
But like, yeah, so Peoria opening up on Wednesday at 7 Central. So if you really want to go, if Peoria is in driving range, I don't know. I assume for Peoria, you'd have to fly into like what, Cincy or Cleveland or something like that?
You could fly into Indianapolis, I feel like.
Okay, yeah.
Because I believe Peoria is kind of in the middle of Chicago, so you would just kind of go like straight east.
Okay.
And then it would just be, you know, just driving, I guess. I don't really know how else to explain it. I'm like looking it up right now. Yeah, it's pretty much like in the middle of Illinois.
Okay.
You know, it's a little bit north of Springfield and a little bit northwest of Champaign. So you could, I mean, you probably need to fly into Chicago, but if you get a rental car, you could probably get away with driving from Indianapolis to Peoria. It's probably a little bit less time if you went from Indianapolis to St. Louis.
All right. Well, point being, if you want to go, it'll be on October 6th to the 8th. Yeah, look, in general, Jake, though, the fact that I know that Pittsburgh is the first major event of the season, and everybody's really hyped. And also, like we discussed, like I think 2 episodes ago, the fact that they raised the Masters number
point total.
Point total, the CP to 600 means that you have to go to a number of regionals. Most likely you're looking at between 3 and 6 regionals. You have to cap out at your points. And so yeah, people are really hype. If you can lock in that 600 points as soon as possible, it's just less pressure. So I don't know if this will be the norm, if that like things sell out within 30 minutes or 15 minutes every single time.
I think it will be. It has been since events have come back. And this is not necessarily.
I feel like Hartford didn't sell out for a few days.
I
didn't register until like the day after or something like that. I don't know,
but I feel like especially Midwest events just sell out right away.
I guess that's fair. There are no Northeast events this year, so.
Yeah. And maybe that's why there's no Northeast events. Maybe it's because they're like, we don't max capacity like we do in the Midwest or something of that nature. But I don't know. I mean, planning and stuff goes many, many years ahead, especially when you're holding events like this. It's not just like it's not like 2 weeks. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to host a regional here.
For me, I'm just saying this right now. I understand that planning goes ahead, but I don't want to give them a pass anymore. I'm tired. This is just me. This is Sean's soapbox for a second. I'm tired of giving the event organizers and the Pokemon Company a pass for the fact that, yes, they do have to have contracts with these venues for, a year or 2 in advance, let's say. Because they're making the decision to raise the points, right? So it's like, oh, well, we have these contracts. Sure, but the contracts don't stipulate that it needs to be 600 points to qualify for Worlds, for one. And I don't know how all these venues are, but a lot of venues, they don't max out the space at the venue, right? Like the Hartford regionals, if I'm correct, I think there was more space at the venue that you could have used and they just chose not to save money. Now, I don't know all those details, but point being is if you're going to make it harder for people to qualify, thus forcing more people to compete in regionals at all, right? What that does is like, okay, well, you've made the events now a requirement and you're not increasing the number of events people can go to. Like, don't raise the point total until you have more events, till you have more capacity. Because otherwise, what you're doing is basically telling people, and I saw this on Verbank, people are upset that, like, if you're making me go to regionals, I'm down to spend the money, but if I can't even get into regionals, then I can't even compete for a championship because I'm not there within 10 to 15 minutes of every time they go live because people have lives, jobs, whatever.
I also am curious on the question. So, like, obviously, fire codes, safety stuff, you have to cap events at some point, right? You can't just have an unlimited number of people. I, on Twitter at least, follow pretty much just like top players, well-known players, kind of things like that. I guess even like I don't follow just the Lil Timmy, right, on social media and stuff. I feel like more often than not, at least for Pittsburgh's example, and I have no real data to showcase this, so I would love to see the people that were ready at 8 o'clock Eastern time, that were ready, they got in, whether it was the very beginning, you know, right away, no misclick of buttons, or, you know, in the 15 minutes after, you know, because people drop off for not actually registering or whatever. I saw mainly the people who were there ready got in, but the people that missed it were people that, you know, didn't jump on until 8:02, missed it because of a nap, I think I saw at one point. And again, I have no actual data to showcase what it's actually like, but I would be curious to do like some sort of survey on like, if you didn't get in, what time did you try to register? And then if you did get in, what time did you try to register? Because and maybe that's not even the best way to approach it, but at least from my limited perspective, it was like the people who wanted to get in, they got in and were ready to get in right away. Now, I understand if you're still at work or you're driving home at 8 o'clock, you know, that sucks. I'm sorry. I work a lot of times when these things open and when these events happen. So I feel you there. But I don't know. It's like Worlds should be exclusive. You know, I don't think anybody should get into Worlds. I think it should be exclusive. And I feel like the players who are trying to go and win Worlds, they're getting in. But again, this is a very limited perspective.
Yeah. I mean, you're
so I don't know.
You're almost certainly right in that the people most likely to win Worlds are already so committed to the game that like their schedule revolves around the game.
Yeah.
By definition, right? So yeah, but the thing is, they're never going to have an issue regardless of what the system is like. They'll adapt to whatever the system is. And I think designing for those players feels weird. Like you don't design a system for the 1% of players that are, because like they're going to go to every event they need to qualify. But then like the point is that's not 1,200 people. That's maybe in the U.S. 200 people that actually are going to go to 70% of all the regionals in the United States and Canada. It's a small number. And so then it becomes like, okay, well, who are these events for then? Are these events only for people that we have predetermined are the most extreme, like invested in the competitive circuit? Like, I think it's good that they're there, right? They need to be there because you need that. But I don't know, I think we talk about all the time, like, you know, we encourage people to like, you know, hey, if you really like the Pokemon card game, obviously go to your locals. But outside of going to your locals, go to a regional. Like, they're fun. Like, I went to Hartford. It was a lot of fun. But what you're doing is telling people, hey, if you didn't know about this event a month, 2 months in advance, and were ready to register within a 30-minute window, like it's Taylor Swift tickets, right? Like, what it does is it actually cuts off a lot of people who are semi-invested from attending these events, not because they're trying to compete for worlds necessarily. And I know that goes counter to my argument a little bit earlier, but like, I don't know. I just think it's a really weird scenario of like, if you want to raise the cap, but you're not going to expand the capacity for people to attend the events, that just feels really weird. Because what you basically have said is, you know, by making it 600 points, you know, I don't know how many more people need to attend regionals, but now can't by definition. There will be people that will be left out for whatever reason. I don't know. It leaves a really bad taste in my mouth because I'm just like,
It's definitely a really weird spot. I mean, I give it until like after 2025 Worlds, so not this next Worlds that we're having, but the one after, because I know how event planning and things like that goes. I give until then for it to feel better. And if it's not feeling better, then I'll definitely go in and have the I'm dissatisfied taste. But right now I'm like
giving it two more years.
Yeah, I mean, because like, I would venture to say that they did not expect after COVID for Pokemon to be this popular.
That's fair.
You know?
Yeah.
And so they probably, like, during COVID, when they were preparing for everyone to come back, they probably settled on these, like, new contracts and things like that. So I feel like I need to give them a little bit more time for some of that to run out and for them to make new ones. And we'll just see. I mean, we'll see after that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my neutral perspective, I guess.
No, that's fair. I think that, you know, if the Pokemon Company is good at anything, I'll grant them this. They're good at responding to consumer demand.
Yes.
Right? When there was not enough cards being printed and everything was going through the roof and they had to stop selling them at Target, what did Pokemon do? They bought a printing company called Millennium and have printed the crap out of modern cards, more than ever have been printed, right? So they've responded in kind. So yeah.
When people have loved the illustration rares, the character rares, they now put them in every set. And there's so many of them.
So, you know, that's also a fair statement. I don't know. I just those are my thoughts, Jake. But yeah,
it's definitely frustrating. It's definitely frustrating to feel like that you have to have 800,000 download speed in order to make it, and you have to be perfect on your clicks at maximum speed with a full sensitivity mouse.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, the fact that there's no Northeast regionals, like Pittsburgh
that also kind of sucks.
Is maybe the closest regional to me, and I would have to fly. Like, I'm not going to drive 9 hours to get to Pittsburgh, 10 hours. So that being the closest one, and I'm like, okay, well, I missed this one. So maybe North Carolina in like, I don't know, however many months. So it just sort of feels like, yeah, I guess I'm just not doing regionals this year.
Just wait for NAIC.
Like, come on. The most populous, you know, section of the United States is just basically like, I guess we're not doing regionals this year. And that's why people are going to play never mind.
Anyways, Sean, there's some product news that we can go over real quick. I think we've touched on Gyarados EX getting a premium collection box in the past, but at the GameStop conference that Pokemon attends every year and reveals a holiday box such as this, they did reveal the product in there. It also has displayed products from 151, so I think you're going to be able to get some 151 stuff in here if you are so lucky. There's also some cool sleeves that it comes with in there, so that is something worth noting. Gyarados EX, not necessarily the best Pokemon card, but it is something that you can get as a collector. It's going to be probably about $40, and it's going to release on November 3rd.
I will say, Jake, the sleeves, they're cool.
They're pretty cool. I'm just curious on what they're going to feel like. Are they like the crappy ETB sleeves, or are they like the typical like Japanese sleeves? Because this looks like Japanese sleeve style, you know, with the for our audio only listeners, at the text at the bottom there is the Pokemon trading card game. And to be honest, I wish I had it in front of me, but I don't keep these sleeves. I wish I knew what like the Juniper sleeves looked like from the milk carton box thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know if those had that like text on the bottom.
I think that this image of the sleeves is taken from the Japanese sleeves.
Yeah, because that looks like the back
Japanese...
of a Japanese Pokemon card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that our sleeves may be slightly different in look and feel. So probably they won't be the same manufactured style. They'll be more like the American ones. But hey, some people love collecting sleeves, and these are pretty dope.
Yeah,
so.
And I mean they are pretty cool and pretty neat. They look good in the binder. But you know what else would look good in your collection, Sean? We have touched on this before. The Pokemon Trading Card Game Classic. I think we talked about this when it first came out or first was announced. This is a premium collection type thing that is going to feature 360 card decks headlined by Bas Set Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise. It'll have a mix of old, new, reprinted cards and whatnot, etc., etc. We got some reveals on some of the cards, their holo patterns, things of that nature. The glittery holo pattern, which is very, very cool. Like you could get Bas Set Bulbasaur with the holo pattern, like actually kind of really neat. And it comes with the weird like coin dome thing, or
the
die
damage counters.
Yeah, the die rolling dome and the damage counter rings and cones, but it comes with like a super cool like foldable playing field, and it just, if you are a collector, it looks incredible. But there's another card that I specifically wanted to talk about that was in here, and with the PokeBeach article that you can see on PokeBeach, it has like all the deck lists and stuff. But a new Mr. Mime card was revealed that was never released overseas. It came out in vending machines in Japan in November 1998, part of an illustration contest that happened in 1997. So really, really cool. I mean, they're, like it says in PokeBeach, they're going to have to pretend it's a card from 1999, which they have done previously with Celebrations cards. But looking at this card, like, I love this Mr. Mime card.
This is awesome. The art on this, I have it up on screen right now, Jake, like in big screen. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, the art on this is really weird and different, especially for that era.
Because it's like part of that illustration contest, feel, and who knows, does it say the illustrator? It does. Kasumi Matsuda. Yeah. I wonder how old Kasumi Matsuda is, what they were like, in 1997 when this illustration contest was going on and they made this. But like, it just looks so cool. And I wonder also what a lot of these cards are going to go for on like the secondary market.
I mean, I assume because it's part of this collection, that they'll probably be worth quite a bit. This Mr. Mime in English, I don't know. Who knows what it'll be worth, but I bet this Mr. Mime in English will be the most valuable card of the set, because there is no counterpoint to it. Like it's not like a different version of a card that was printed 25 years ago. It's the only one, and it was printed 25 years later or whatever. Like, that's wild.
It's really, really cool. It will retail at $275 USD, I believe. So it is more pricey, but I don't know. I actually kind of think that it's worth it. You're getting 3 pre-made decks to have fun with. You get it's like buying like a nice chess set kind of deal.
Yeah.
It's very high quality.
It is very high quality. I'm looking through I have the deck list pulled up as well. The Venusaur, the Charizard, and Ho-Oh. And there's a Blastoise and Suicune deck list. I mean, it's an interesting concept. I'm like, I don't know how playable the decks are. It's one of those things where like if you buy
I don't think these cards will like really be, 1, competitive, but 2, legal.
Yeah, no, they're definitely not legal. But I'm saying like, if you buy this, there's a thought in my mind like, okay, well, you buy this and you can take the cards apart and put them into retro decks, right? Like you can use the old computer search, if you need a proxy for computer search in an expanded deck. It's not legal, but like you can this as a proxy. Or like if you want to play really like vintage format, you can have all these cards now, computer search and bill and all this other stuff. But it's one of those weird things where I'm like, I don't know, if you buy this though, do you just keep everything together, cards and all, like you always have it as its own thing? Probably.
I think I mean, there's no right or wrong answer of what you do with your cards. If you would, like to take the decks apart and take this, like playing field to your locals, right, to play at your local challenge, like that is all up to you, like whatever you want to do with. I probably would keep it all together because I think it's just really cool. And like anytime I want to, play with someone who maybe doesn't have cards or is curious about playing the game, or like some people I know, like we just play the different formats that I have, from time to time. So I don't know. I mean, there's no wrong way to collect this and use it. I would hope that, I mean, there is a wrong way, and it's buying it and selling it for $1,000. Just kidding. That's not technically wrong. I just hate it.
The one thing I do want to point out, Jake, that I don't know if you noticed is the Japanese version of this product.
Oh, I noticed. I know what you're going to say.
Far superior.
Yep.
Because for the listeners out there who can't see what I'm looking at, I'm going to pull up a regular Charmander for the viewers. And this is the English version. And it looks normal. It's got an interesting foil pattern. It's like sparkly dots. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. But otherwise, very normal yellow border, classic. Then you pull up the Japanese one, and it's a foil border. And I'm like, excuse me, do you think...
That's a non-foil border.
In the Japanese?
I'm sorry, I got it mixed up. I was too focused on the fact that the
Charmander,
that the English ones were so bad, but never mind, continue on.
But yeah, like the Japanese cards, if they're in foil, they come with an entirely foil border as well that's like gold, and I'm just like, did you not think that people that speak not Japanese would want this? This is amazing.
It's a lot of pain and suffering, Sean, personally.
Like, give me the Japanese ones. Like, honestly, Jake, somebody said that the energy is legal. All of the cards except the basic energy say this card cannot be used at official tournaments. But the energy is tournament legal. The problem is you can't use
energies
Japanese.
Outside of special energies like double colorless.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
The problem though is you still can't use Japanese energy cards in non-Japanese tournaments.
But if you, I guess I don't own any like base set Japanese energies, but like looking at the base set energy that's in the holo, I mean, there's no. And I don't remember this on the English cards. There's no text or anything that would, like there are on ones now where it just says basic fire energy. So like if you bought the Japanese version, could you use those cards? Like I don't think the energy up top, it just says energy. Like it doesn't have the Japanese word for energy.
Yeah, I don't believe you'd be allowed to use it technically because it has a different card back. And I know you have to sleeve everything up.
You know what?
Yeah. Which is dumb, right? Because it's like you can't see the card back. It's but
I can kind of see it because like I play at locals like some Japanese cards just because I have some Japanese versions of cards that I prefer, and sometimes if you were to just have one, I have multiple Japanese cards in my decks, but if you have one, sometimes you can notice which one it is.
That's fair. Yeah,
with like a thick back of sleeves.
Yeah, and
I get it. I hate it, but I get it.
Yeah, it may also be that the card stock that they use in Japan is, if it's even slightly different, you could potentially know the difference. So, yeah, I get it, but they are the superior energy as well. Like these energy, the Japanese basic energy are gorgeous.
Oh, I know, they're so good.
Ugh. Anywho, oh my gosh, imagine the silver border. Rare candy in the new Charizard deck, Jake. It would be glorious.
That's what they're doing. I don't know if rare candy's in there, but they are doing, as we mentioned in previous episodes, Prize Pack 3, the Prize Pack 3 series. They have silver border holos with the like galaxy splatter pattern, which are very, very cool. The Ultra Ball in that set looks awesome. So we're getting a consolation prize.
That's fair. Jake, are you ready to talk about what Obsidian Flames is going to do or not do, we think, to the meta?
If you want to take your decks to locals and you want to play an actual standard deck, Obsidian Flames, the new set, has released, and it's not the most competitive set that we have ever seen, but one thing is for certain is that Charizard is not a terrible deck. It is going to be a meta relevant deck. Now, do I think the first week, 2 weeks of it out, that it's going to be BDIF or whatever? No, but I don't think it's going to be obsolete as most of the other set or cards in the set are. It's the first set in a while, in my opinion, that the poster child has not automatically become the best deck in format.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah, it's very playable. But I think that the meta itself still will revolve around a few of the key decks that are already at the top. So
it's very cool, I think, too, because I think we're in a format where, although it feels really bad to lose early, I feel like there's a lot of different decks that you can play.
Yeah.
Which is a step forward in the right direction. We're going to tell you some of those decks right now that we've been seeing in online tournaments on Twitter and things like that. Sean, the first one, we're going to talk about Arceus Giratina V-Star. And Sean, at first glance, you may think, wait a minute, Jake, we've talked about this deck before. Why are we talking about this deck again? Sean, do you see what adjustment that Arceus Giratina has made in this deck?
Yeah. The adjustment is Viper V and V-Star.
Superior, please.
Superior. Sorry. Superior.
Viper.
They're close. It kind of looks like a snake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jake, what does this do?
One thing that you'll see across, not every deck has been doing this, but some of the decks have adjusted to counter Charizard, because Charizard is weak to grass. Superior V-Star, a V-Star Pokemon that is grass, 270 HP. It's primarily, I believe, for this first attack, which is Regal Blender. It's grass and 2 colorless. So a 3 energy deck that could be easily powered up by Arceus V-Star and also utilize double colorless energy is kind of a pretty effective. I believe this is Cashman's list.
Okay.
How
much does the damage?
Maybe not. But it's 190 base damage. And plus, after that 190 damage, you may move any amount of energy from your Pokemon to your other Pokemon in any way you'd like. So you can move around energies to a Giratina V-Star if you expect your Superior to get knocked out in response to be able to use Lost Impact, or Arceus to Trinity Nova, or whatever have you. So very, very cool. And 190 hitting on Charizard is 380. But if you use the double turbo energy, like I mentioned earlier, you could do 170 base, still knock out a Charizard at 340 damage. So very, very cool tech card, a card that did not see really any play at all, Sean, before this moment. It also has a V-Star Power Star Winder, 60 times for 1 grass energy, 60 damage for each energy attached to this Pokemon. So not terrible. Well, I mean, here's the thing. If you and it also says switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. So it's not terrible if you draw really good early and you don't have to use Starbirth right away, most Arceus decks do.
That's true. I think another thing about this is, in general, I would say, with Charizard becoming a deck, and a deck that, is not bad. It's a good deck.
It's going to be meta relevant, something that you'll have to know how to play the matchup and things like that.
Exactly. And that deck, though, I think popularized the idea of Pidgeot EX in Stage 2 decks, which you'll start to see maybe Pidgeot EX in Chen Pao lists as well. But that deck is heavily reliant on abilities. And I think what is becoming very obvious to everyone is hey, if you can find a top-tier deck that can play 4 Path to the Peak, like Giratina decks can, whether it's Arceus Giratina or Lost Box Giratina, I think either one you can play 4 paths in. If you can stick those paths and then hit an Iono at the right time against these decks, whether it's early or mid-game, they just can't respond, right? Like those decks may not have the draw power to get out of that situation because Pidgeot is what gets them something every turn. Charizard needs the ability to put energy on, and if you get it early, Arceus can't do all the setup you need. So I don't know. I've seen this list. Another grass type Pokemon I saw in another list was Shaman V.
Yes, I've seen Shaman V. We won't feature it today, but I've seen it in both regular like turbo Lost Box lists, and I've also seen it more often with Giratina Lost Box lists. It's just like a one card inclusion.
Yeah.
In Lost Tina at least, and it's a little bit more in the turbo box builds because you have to add another basic energy type because Shaman, it uses Revenge Blast, 1 grass, 1 colorless, 60 base damage, 40 for each prize your opponent has taken on top of that. So Shaman more of a late game Pokemon, but Superior V I feel like is not a bad option.
Oh yeah.
In several situations.
Yeah, I think Superior, to your point, it's better to start the game with that as being an attacker, right? Against you can bring it out against the Charizard. Say they hit into you. Like Charizard early game is not that great because they can only do 180 if you haven't taken any prizes, right? So like, yeah, they're doing 180, which is not bad, but it's not knocking anything but your Bidoof out, right? Or your,
Yeah.
So if you can make a follow-up turn of like, okay, well, I'm just going to bring in Superior V-Star, knock you out, and Shaman requires you to have, lost 3 prizes effectively. Whereas Superior can come in right away and basically set up a situation where like if you put one more Charizard down, I'm going to try to boss that thing up and knock it out. You're never going to hit me, hopefully, for knockout. So
it's very curious how this card will be included, and again, like Sean said, there's been other additions in there, and there's actually going to be one more that I really love, Sean, in future decks. But first, let's go on to the next deck. Since Charizard is all the hype, this is kind of the Charizard list that I have been messing with. I feel like this is the pretty standard Charizard, Arceus V-Star, and Pidgeot deck. So in my playing, you start out with Charizard, you hit a Trinity Nova, right? Or primarily utilizing Starbird to be able to get Charizards and Pidgeots out. And it's very interesting in this deck because we talked about how Charizard EX is not a great attacker in the beginning of the game. And you may look at this Arceus deck and you might be like, wow, 1 double turbo? We've seen double turbo be a 4 of in all Arceus decks. But with Charizard's ability being able to accelerate basic energies to any Pokemon, it's provide a lot of utility to, you don't even need turn 1 attachment anymore with Arceus decks, which is crazy in my opinion. So very good there, but not only can you use Arceus V-Star to attack early, but using Pidgeot, I have found out in my games played how good of an attacker Pidgeot is. It's basically like your first priority of Charizard's your first priority in evolution, but Pidgeot, like you try to get Pidgeot out as soon as you can because Pidgeot with quick search, like you mentioned, very good. But also after you've hit with a Arceus V-Star, right, being able to come in and clean up potentially with the Pidgeot EX is so good. You're facing against Lost Box. Pidgeot EX is a great attacker because it's also got free retreat, can take away a stadium. If your opponent's playing a beach court or an artisan to be able to do something, or collapse stadium or path to the peak, if you just manually attach energies to the Pidgeot. So it's a very cool card, and I really like Pidgeot EX, especially in this list. Pidgeot EX is slowly finding its way into other lists as well, but just a really cool deck. And I've played a lot of games on ladder with this list specifically, and I'm not going to call myself a connoisseur or whatever, but I win a good amount of my games just by the fact of just the deck being what it is. I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the version that I've been playing around with is a little different. It has research instead of Colress experiments. So listeners out there, this one features 4ION04 Colress Experiment as your sort of draw engine, which I think that, that may be a preferable engine because research is awkward. You never want to research away a hand that has a rare candy or two in it, because the second you do that, you've got a couple of attackers that will just never exist, right? They just, those rare candies are so precious. So prioritizing draw without having to discard is a big deal.
So one of the things that I've liked about Colress as well, sorry to cut you off there, is like Colress can find, if you need 2 cards for a combo, right, off of a Colress, you find one of them, and then you just Pidgeot Quick Search for another.
Yeah.
Right? It's very easy to get off evolutions, especially your stage 2 evolutions, because of Charizard EX.
Now, Jake, I will ask, is the lack of Pokemon search, because this deck has 4 Battle VIP, 4 Ultra Ball, and 2 Artisan, which, it's not nothing. 2 Artisan is good, but knowing that outside of turn 1, you can't really search for basic Pokemon very easily. It's, I don't know, it's pretty difficult. So, like, have you, if this is the exact list you've been playing, have you run into awkward situations where you just get like this weird bricky hand, or you have an Ultra Ball and you're like, I wish this was a Nest Ball?
I do feel that way sometimes, but that's also the beauty of like Arceus's Starbirth, right? With Starbirth, with Quick Search even, I don't have to get a Charmander down turn 1, right? More than likely, my starting hand is going to have an Arceus V in it and a basic Fire Energy, right? Because there's 12 energy cards in this deck overall, which is decently high. So I'm always going to probably at least have a turn 1 attachment. If I don't have turn 1 attachment, I probably find a Battle VIP Pass. I probably find an Ultra Ball for some of those Pokemon, or the ability to find Starbirth the next turn. So yes, you do, like, there's not a lot of Pokemon search in here, but with the combination of like Starbirth to find you kind of just exactly what you need, at any point, and then Quick Search to literally find you anything that you need at any point, I feel like there's a decent consistency engine to where, like, if you get going, you win. Like, you're just gonna win. So it's very interesting. I'm also low on the ladder. I'm not like in Master Ball tier, and I'm not playing in these online tournaments. I'm just playing ranked ladder when I can. And but the deck feels good. It's a lot of fun. But we will get into a deck, not right now, but later, to where I feel like is surprisingly countering it.
Okay, interesting. I just wanted to, I haven't really had a chance to play it proper yet. I'm still waiting for a couple cards in the mail as well, but it seems like a really fun deck. I think a lot of people, if any of your locals are having challenges or even cups in the next few weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a decent amount of Charizard, because it's
I'm sure
new, it's hype. And Charizard, to be frank, it's 330 HP, right? It's a big dude. It's a big Pokemon. It's unlikely that you're going to be getting completely blown out of any match with Charizard. But, man, Path to the Peak. I just look at this deck list, and I'm just like, you only have 3 stadiums. You don't have any lost vacuums. And I'm just like, I'm terrified. That's why all these decks I'm recommending are just starting points.
Yeah. To build off of. I'm not saying that these are the lists that you should definitely play.
Jake, what about what you would think would be a good counter to Zard? Because, Zard, it's fire. Well, this Zard is darkness. But anyways, Chen Pao, another deck that I think people were really hyped on for the last set. It was certainly popular. How do you feel like this deck fits into the current format?
I think Pidgeot EX is absolutely cracked in this deck. It feels so good to Pidgeot EX in here for whatever you need. Superior energy retrieval. You have the Irida, which can get you Baxcalibur candy, but maybe you don't have the Chin Pao. Pidgeot can give you the Chin Pao. The Nest Ball to go get it can get you the Lost Vacuum, right, to put a specific card away. Or, and the thing about path in the Charizard deck is Chin Pao also kind of suffers from Path to the Peak, but has more counters because Irida can find item cards like Lost Vacuum, as I mentioned. So it's really, really cool. And I don't know if it's better than the Charizard, but I think it's got the capabilities to do a lot of really, really good things because you're playing those escape ropes, you know, switching around a little bit to get more energy, the ability to get a bunch of those energy, and honestly be able to grab an energy from your deck. You can grab 3 energies in your deck with quick search as well. So just Pidgeot EX, again, so much flexibility. It's a great cleanup attacker as well. You know, with Chin Pao, if you don't hit the exact number that you need to knock out, Pidgeot EX is probably going to clean up. And it's a free retreater with 280 HP, so it's not easy to knock out right away. So you can kind of swing the prize trade a little bit back in your favor. So just really, I mean, I love this list. I think it's really cool. I think Jared Grimes put out a video on pretty much this exact 60. I don't know if it's this exact, but it's pretty close to that. The idea of Pidgeot EX just being in Chin Pao in general. So go check out his YouTube channel in that video.
The one thing I will say that I think Pidgeot, I know we think about it like it's obviously great in Charizard, don't get me wrong, but I think it's surprisingly useful in Chen Pao, not just for like getting an Irida, the free pivot, right? Because oftentimes with Chen Pao, he's only 220 HP, right? Like the odds of him getting knocked out, that Pokemon getting knocked out on the following turn are fairly high, I would say.
Yeah.
And the problem that I've had when I've played it is there's moments where like Chen Pao will get knocked out, you have to send something up. Every single one of the Pokemon you're going to send up is going to have 1 retreat cost. And yeah, like Escape Rope exists, but maybe you don't want to play that. Maybe you don't want to put in, I don't know, like a Switch Cart or whatever. The free retreater that you can always send up immediately after, especially one as big as Pidgeot, it's amazing because it's 1 less energy you have to effectively throw away in order to get into your next Chen Pao, which means it's 1 energy easier every single turn to take those big knockouts. And I think that's something that probably gets maybe overlooked a little bit is how big a free retreater is in this deck specifically. So I just wanted to point that out.
It's wild to see these decks, and to be honest, I was not very hype on Pidgeot EX before release, but after playing a couple decks with it and seeing it actually in action, it's definitely probably not as good as the original Pidgeot that had quick search, but it is a pretty relevant card that I think you're going to see a lot of, especially any deck that plays Rare Candy. Maybe not Gardevoir.
Yeah.
Although could see Gardevoir. It's 2 cards. I don't know if it's worth it, but like any other deck that plays Rare Candy, the Charizard, like we mentioned, the Chin Pao, Baxcalibur, like it'll play Pidgeot.
Yeah.
Especially an Irida deck.
You're absolutely right. And I think it becomes like, I don't know what the future sets are going to look like. Like right now we're in a big era where Pokemon is trying to make Stage 1 and especially Stage 2 Pokemon relevant again. You know, you have Baxcalibur for the Chen Pao list. You have Gardevoir EX. You have Charizard EX. You have Pidgeot. The more Pokemon, I think, moves in the direction towards Stage 2s and Stage 1s, slowing the game down, even if it's just 1 turn, just the more value Pidgeot EX has in the long run. So if you can, get your versions now.
It's nice. I will say I forgot to mention this at the top of our conversation of Obsidian Flames deck. Remember, what is it? PokeCard.io?
Yes.
What's it? Yeah, PokeCard.io in the show notes in the description. If you're an audio only listener, or maybe you just listen on the YouTube channel, I guess, or something, you don't actually watch the video, which is fine, however you want to enjoy us. In the description, there will be a link there where you can see every deck that we feature on the podcast with a copy pastable link to put on Pokemon Trading Card Game Live, or just visually see it in general if you want to copy the list, play it yourself, things like that. So make sure, again, check the description for that. But Sean, let's move on to what I'm going to hype this deck up. And it's not, I mean, a little bit has to do with because of the World Championships, but Mew Vmax. I have played this deck into Charizard V-Star. And to be fair, Mew is a little bit more developed in terms of its, what's the word that I'm looking for? Its best build.
It's optimized in many ways.
Yeah, optimized compared to Charizard EX, but I 2-1 to Charizard EX with just one path to the peak. Not playing this Excelgor. I was literally just playing the World Championship list, the list that won Worlds, and I 2-1 to Charizard EX, an Arceus Charizard Pidgeot deck. Probably 58 cards from what we just showed you. So that's crazy. And then Xander Perro put out this idea. Xander Perot, I'm not 100% sure. But anyways, he put out this idea of putting a Excelgor in this list. Sean, do you even know what that Pokemon does?
Of course I don't know what this is. Jake, what the heck is a Excelgor?
It is a stage 1 grass Pokemon, 90 HP, no level balls in this list, unfortunately. But anyways, it has an attack for 1 grass and 2 colorless. Ninja Tornado, I believe it's called, for 120 damage. But it says if this Pokemon moved from the bench to the active during your turn, it can use its attack for just 1 grass energy. When you're playing Fusion Strike energies in your list and you have access to things like power tablets or super effective glasses in this specific list that we're looking at, you can wipe out a Charizard EX. And so very, very cool in my opinion. I love Excelgor. I think it's goofy. I think it's dumb. But especially the early game and specific parts of the game, your opponent is eyeing down either a Mew Vmax or an Excelgor, right? Or potentially a Meloetta if they didn't use it on the first turn to blow up your V Pokemon, right? So you have to bring up the idea of like, okay, do I boss up the Excelgor? Or do I get because the Excelgor is definitely going to knock me out, or do I hit into the Mew VMAX for extra prizes? It all depends on the state of the game and depending on when you put down Excelgor. But again, the exact 60 cards from the World Championship deck, I was able to beat Charizard EX 2-1.
Yeah,
pretty handedly too. I feel like in those 2 games at least.
I'm sure that has a lot to do with just how consistent that list is. Like, it's crazy. Like Mew, unless you really brick, Mew just feels like it just, yep, I'm going to have all the Genesects and all the Mews by turn 1, probably. And I'm just going to draw and draw and draw, and your path to the peak means nothing to me. I'm just going to keep drawing and keep drawing. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's wild. Every time I've played against it, it just feels like a train, and I can't do anything to stop it.
It is such a cool deck to see it constantly survive and constantly come back. I'm gonna say it right now. Mew VMAX is gonna win a regional before 2024 comes upon us.
Now, speaking of this specific list,
this list is a little wackier than what I originally thought.
Sure, yeah. I mean, like, look, little text here and there aside, I think the big thing here is the Excelgor. It's interesting. I had never thought to myself, is there a good grass type Pokemon that's a Fusion Strike that you can put in? Of course not. That didn't cross my brain. The weird thing about Excelgor, I think, is that it's obviously good because you can one-shot a Charizard EX. The problem, though, is that Excelgor gives up 1 prize. Mew VMAX gives up 3 prizes, and I'm adding this up for the listeners. I'm at 4 right now. Genesect gives up 2. You've made the math easier for your opponent with this.
It definitely is only to be used in like specific moments, right? You can't just go in with it guns a-blazing without a game plan. But I think that's one of the things that Mew does really well is like organizing those game plans to an effective strategy for people who have played it for a long time, right? I mean, Azul and Vance in the mirror, right, in the semifinals, they both won a game because they got 4 power tablets in a single turn.
Yep.
Right? That's how they won some of those games. 2 out of the 3 games in their top 4 series. So it's like, it's crazy how this deck just functions, and it's so good all the time. I don't know. It's also got Town Store, which allows you to find tool cards, so you can find the Forest Sealstone, the Choice Belt, the super effective glasses, which is really cool. I feel like, even though, because Kramer-Matic is not the most dependable card in the world when you hit tails a bunch. But
fair.
Anyways, I'm really high on Mew Vmax right now. I really want to play it so bad, but I'm still looking for like 2 more Mew Vmax. But I think that's the deck it's still going to be one of the best decks.
Yeah, like, I think there's going to be people at locals, Jake, that like they've played Mew Vmax the whole time. They're just going to keep playing it because the deck is just like butter. The deck's so good. And those players are going to be the ones who probably do really well in any new format, because everyone's going to be trying out new cards, and they're just going to be like, that's great for you. I'm sure you'll figure it out in 3 weeks, but I'm going to stomp you while you figure it out.
I'm going to win this right now. And the final deck that we've got is for those of you that just want to play some fun stuff. You know, you want to have a good time. It is Zorob Box. I will continuously keep talking about this deck because it's so goofy and so fun. It was done during Amy's Pumpka Amy's tournament, but I'm not finding the tournament because there's some wacky cards in here, like Scovillian, Sean.
Yeah.
Scovillian grass Pokemon. That is something to note because this deck now plays 4 reversal energies. Right now, 3 energy Pokemon are relevant in this deck. And like Scovillian, right? Scovillian has 90 plus, I believe. If it has a fire energy attached to it, it does 90 more damage, I believe is what the text says. And because reversal energies on an evolution Pokemon, when you're down in prizes every single energy, you've got a fire energy, you're going to be doing 180 to the Charizard, which is 360 for knockout.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, you can kind of game plan around the big weaknesses, which is I'm going to have, you know, Mightyena for Mew Vmax. I'm going to have, there's not really anything here for Gardevoir, I don't think. Like, I guess Mightyena, yeah, you could just power the Mightyena up and do it, right? That's fine.
Because you have reversal energies.
Right. I can hit Charizard with the Scovillian and knock that out. Hit Arceus with Wormadam. Is that what it is?
Wormadam.
Yeah, with Wormadam. And, you know, in case there's a random Lugia running around, I have Electivire. And if you want to get real cheeky, I got the Slowbro to take an extra prize or 2, whatever.
The Electivire is very interesting, actually, because it's not actually the Lugia counter. Fun fact.
Oh, so what is it? I can't read them in this tiny.
Yeah. It's just a screenshot picture, so we can't zoom in. But I've got the card pulled up. 140 HP, Stage 1 electric Pokemon. Has a 1 energy cost, Explosive Bolt 30 plus. If any of your benched Magmortar have any damage counters on them, this attack does 90 more damage. So that's why it's not the Lugia counter, because you don't have any Magmortars in this deck. But with the reversal energy of Lightning colorless, this attack does 50 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. So you attack a couple times with this in like a Gardevoir deck, a Lost Box deck or something, you could do a ton of damage to the board. And even before that, right, with like early game Charizard, if they bench too many Pidgeys and Charmanders or whatever, that Electivire is going to be doing some damage. And you've got the classic Wormadam, you know, for all the Pokemon hitting for fighting weakness on Miraidons, which are now rising in popularity. We're not showcasing any of those today, but if you want, you can check out Andrew Mahone's Tricky Gems list from Worlds. It's a pretty good starting point, I feel like. There's just so many different options in here, and every single time, you know, a set comes out, it seems like Zorob Box just gets another one, another Pokemon that can really help it out. And I don't know, if Lost Box goes down enough, does Zorob Box take over? At least steal a regional or get in a top 8. That's what I'm going to say. Top 8. Is it going to top 8?
I mean, maybe. I think the only thing that I would add to this kind of list, having
Mm-hmm.
never played it and not knowing anything
Yeah,
about how
I
it
have not
plays,
played it either.
the only thing I would add though is, look, you don't use any Pokemon that are affected by Path to the Peak.
Mm-hmm.
Just put Path to the Peak in. Just I tell
It's weird though because you really have to get your Zoruas out,
you
right?
do.
Because you want to get your level balls for the Curlias, right? You want to get your level ball for Manaphy. The Flapple, I believe, is only 80 HP. Like, you want to save your Pokemon search cards. Like, you want to get your Zoruas and Ralts out from the Battle VIP Pass and the Artisan. You don't want to use, level ball if you don't have to. You definitely don't want to use Ultra Ball if you don't have to. Because you want to save your Ultra Ball for discarding evolution Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
And things like that. So it's very interesting list. It feels like a tight list too. I do love the Slowbro in there from Pokemon Go though.
Yeah, yeah. Just like,
Do you remember
if
that
your
card?
opponent has if your opponent has one prize left, you take 2 prizes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's and like with this deck, your opponent will always get to a point for the most part, unless they like Greninja you at the right turn. They'll always get to a point where you just take 2 prizes. So like, hey, it's great.
The thing is, you're playing such a heavy counter of reversal energies that you almost hope that you're always down in prizes until the very last moment.
Yeah. I think that's the one maybe odd thing about the deck is that it's so reversal energy. Like it needs it so much that like if you are doing good, right? Like, oh, your opponent gets up into something and knocks one of your dudes out. Cool, I'm going to respond. And now I have to wait effectively for them to take 2 more prizes before I can do anything again.
It's such an odd point, and I don't know. Again, this deck may never be the BDIF or whatever, but if you want a cheap, fun deck to take to your locals and show off some cool combos to your friends, this is the one. So again, these are on our link in the description, PokemonCard.io. There are probably plenty of other decks that will pop up during Obsidian Flames as the set goes on and on, but that was all that we've got today in this one.
Yeah.
Pretty good episode.
Yeah. Jake, if you were going to take one deck to a challenge this weekend, what would you bring?
Mew Vmax.
Okay. Consistency.
I'm pretty set on Mew. Especially right now, like Mew Vmax is pretty much figured out. While Charizard is still growing. So I think you really maximize on like path sticking, right? I had one path in my Charizard matchups that I played, and they just could not do anything about it.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So that's what I would play right now. But I don't know if I'd play that exact 60 though, because I still like Meloetta and 4 Fusion Strike energies, but
hey, the ability for
there's
Meloetta,
some different things to play around, you know?
The ability for Meloetta to get a knockout turn 1 going second is like, you can't write that off. That kind of pressure is crazy. So
yeah, and I mean, especially and sorry to hold this podcast a little bit longer, but with the Arceus matchup, right? They're going to start Arceus more than likely, and they're going to have Arceus in the front. And even if they don't, they're going to put Arceus down because Starbirth is really good, right? It's going to really progress their game plan. So if you can Meloetta early, sure, you have to put 3 of your 4 Fusion Strike energies, potentially 4 on the field, and maybe you won't use Excelgor. I feel like a lot of times you're just going to be so far ahead after knocking out that Arceus V that it's fine to not use the Excelgor, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a very interesting dynamic, and I was very curious. The person that I was playing is like, I'm going to play Charizard, right? And I was like, trust me, bro, I want to play this matchup real quick.
I think that's
also remember that Box of Destruction only works from Pokemon V. Doesn't work on Meloetta. That's something that I found out in the testing too. Because I was like, I'm gonna get 8 damage counters on this Charizard, and then it didn't happen. And I was like, yeah, I should have read the card. It's my first time playing Mew VMAX.
It's fine. Like, I think that just goes to show, right? Just because something is good against your deck, like it hits for weakness, whatever, it doesn't mean that your deck is automatically just gonna lose every time. It's Mew is wildly consistent. People have been playing Drapion now in Lost Box for a year almost, it feels like. And Mew's still fine. So
still was like what, 2 of the top 4 spots at Worlds.
Right.
Like,
so you're like, okay, yeah, I don't think Drapion was the Mew killer we all thought it was entirely. If everyone played it in every deck, maybe, but no.
I will say Drapion did have a decline at Worlds, so it was like the perfect time to play Mew.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, that's a whole other discussion. We won't get into that today because we have things to do. I have to eat dinner. I'm sure Sean has to do some stuff and go to bed. But anyways, thank you so much for listening to the Metapop Podcast, Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. I'm Jake. That's Sean. We will see you later.